All right, so today Polar's announcing their new Grit X2 sports watch, and this basically takes everything from their higher end Grit X2 Pro and puts it into a smaller, lighter, and also less expensive package, with kind of an asterisk there on less expensive, and I'll explain why in just one second. But the Grit X2 is basically the smaller version of their Grit X2 Pro, like it has all the same sports features, navigation features, health and training feedback, dual band GPS, all that stuff. And another thing that it brings from the Grit X2 Pro is the looks, where the Grit X2 Pro is a fantastic looking watch, and this new Grit X2 looks to be quite the stunner as well. So we all now have this smaller size option for those of us who may prefer a smaller watch. Well, at least for most of us. So I actually don't have the Grit X2 to show you here today, and let me explain why. So Polar's launching this today globally except for the US, and many of you can probably already guess why. So for price, they're launching this at 479 euros, which converts to 550 US dollars. However, I doubt that's actually going to be the price if and when it launches in the US. Polar says that they do have plans to launch it in the US at some point, but they haven't given me an exact date quite yet. And being that they aren't initially launching in the US, they've also chosen to not send it to US-based reviewers. Now, why wouldn't they just launch it in the US right now at an adjusted price? Well, let's take a look at their Grit X2 Pro for a second. So when that first launched, that was 749 euros, and then the same in US dollars. However, let's look at the price today. It's now listed on Polar's US website for $885 for the standard model, and then nearly $1,000 for the titanium version. But if we take a look at Polar's website, let's say in the Netherlands, it's the same price as when it first launched. So in the US, the price has actually gone up by around 15% since it first launched. And if we take a look at where it's manufactured, well, that unfortunately kind of tells the story. And this, by the way, is in no way a political discussion here on one side or the other. This is just the reality of kind of what's going on with the trade war. So this is really no fault of Polar, and in fact, they're likely absorbing some of the increased tariffs as well. Interestingly though, if we take a look at their Vantage V3 as well as their M3, those prices don't have the same kinds of drastic adjustments for some reason or another. I'd guess with the V3 that they may already have like a larger stockpile of them, but the M3 is a little bit newer, but both only have like a $10 increase from when they first launched. So there may be a difference in terms of the specific manufacturing locations of some of the components from the Grit X2 Pro, the Vantage V3, as well as the M3. But my guess is that the new Grit X2 falls in the same camp as the Grit X2 Pro, and being that the adjusted price of the Grit X2 Pro isn't really competitive in the States, an adjusted price of the new Grit X2 wouldn't really be competitive either, but it is actually pretty competitive for the rest of the world. So that's just my theory on why Polar isn't releasing in the States, at least for the moment. Anyhow, with all that being said, Polar isn't offering the Grit X2 in the US at launch, and they've also not chosen to send it to US reviewers like myself. So I think DJI actually just did the same thing with their recently released Mavic 4 Pro. Anyhow, a pretty unfortunate situation all around, but let's at least talk about what's new on the Grit X2 for those of us who can actually get this watch, and for those of us in the US who may be looking at this watch when Polar decides to actually launch it into the US. So for the hardware, they took tons of design cues from the Grit X2 Pro, where it has a nice rugged look to it with a stainless steel bezel, which I tend to like, where it's a bit more subtle with not only a smaller bezel, but also a bit smoother with less edges. And then for size and weight, so this has a 45mm case and it's around 12.5mm thick. And for comparison, the Grit X2 Pro has a 48.5mm case and it's around 13.4mm thick. But the closest comparison is actually their Vantage M3, where the M3 has nearly the same dimensions, but the Grit X2 is just ever so slightly bigger, at least on paper, and that probably just has to do with a more rugged build. And speaking of ruggedness, the Grit X2 also has a sapphire lens just like their Grit X2 Pro, so this is just going to be more durable than their Vantage series, which uses Gorilla Glass. And then for weight, they're saying that the Grit X2 is 62 grams with the band and then 39 grams without the band. And 39 grams for just the case itself is actually surprisingly light for a watch with a stainless steel bezel. It also comes with 22mm industry standard band, so you'll be able to swap the band out for, let's say, a nylon band, which may be more comfortable for some of you out there, and nylon bands are also lighter. And for the display, so this looks to actually have the same display as their Vantage M3. So this has a 1.2-inch AMOLED touchscreen display with 416 by 416 pixels. And Polar's current crop of AMOLED displays are pretty good, actually quite good outdoors where they can get super bright. And then for battery life, they say that the Grit X2 can get up to a week of use as using it as a smartwatch. And then for recording outdoor activities, around 30 hours in its highest accuracy performance mode. So less than their Grit X2 Pro, obviously, since it's smaller, but looks to be the same as their Vantage M3. Now, Now, something kind of interesting though about the Grit X2 is that the battery is actually replaceable if you send it into Polar. So they do have sustainability in mind here, where it's not just like your watch is going to be useless down the road after too many recharge cycles. You can actually send it into them to get it replaced, which is actually kind of cool. But other than that though, the Grit X2 has all the same features all around. So the same smartwatch features, it has the same health sensors, including heart rate, SpO2, as well as HRV. It has a dual band satellite chipset. It provides all the same training and recovery feedback like Training Load Pro, Polar Sleep Tracking, which I find to be quite good, and then all the same navigation features as well as offline topo maps, as well as routes with turn-by-turn guidance. Oh, and then lastly, it also has the same 32 gigabytes of storage as well, which can be used for maps as well as routes, but do note that there's still no support for music, just like their other watches. And you could probably expect the Grit X2 to get all the same new features as Polar's other latest generation of watches, so the Advantage V3, the M3, as well as the Grit X2 Pro, because they all now share a same common platform where all the devices should have similar feature sets, with the exception of anything that's hardware dependent. Now, if we want to compare the Grit X2 with some watches from some other manufacturers, it's a little bit tough because there's not many watches that have a direct correlation to this, and I think it mainly comes down to size. So let's say with Suunto, so they have their Race S, which is similar in size, which runs 349 euros, which is much less, but that also doesn't have a sapphire lens. Even the Titanium Race S, by the way, which is closer in price, doesn't have a sapphire lens, by the way, and that was kind of a big miss, I thought, on the Titanium Race S by Suunto. But the Race S and the Grit X2 are pretty similar features overall, like they both have maps, both have dual band, and then both of them also have plenty on the health and recovery side of things, but I'd argue that Polar's health and training feedback is much more robust, and the heart rate accuracy probably does go to Polar as well. However, GPS accuracy I'd probably say goes to Suunto. Comparing to Coros though, may be even tougher though, because they only have one watch at the moment with an AMOLED display, being the Pace Pro, which comes in at 399 euros. However, that's $349 in the States. The Pace Pro has an all plastic construction and also doesn't have a sapphire lens, but I will say though that I'm a pretty big fan of its performance all around, where it performs pretty well for pretty much everything when it comes to accuracy. And I'd also say that it has probably one of the best experiences when it comes to using offline maps, where there's little to no delay when panning and zooming. Now, compared to Garmin though, this gets even tougher because their least expensive watch with maps, at least in their current lineup of watches, is the Forerunner 970, which is 749 euros, which is a lot more, of course. However, that comes with way more. Like, it has a lot more of the health and training feedback side of things. There's a lot more robust ecosystem behind it. And while the Grit X2 has offline maps, they aren't fully routable maps like the 970 has, where the 970 can actually do fully offline on-demand routing. Oh, and the 970 also has a built-in LED flashlight. Now, another Garmin to maybe compare against the Grit X2 would be the Forerunner 965, which is currently on sale for around 499 euros. The 965 may not have a sapphire lens, but it does come with those fully routable maps, just like the 970. That watch also may not receive as many new features in the future since it's a previous generation watch, but even so, it arguably does have much more features than the Grit X2 that's launching right now. Anyhow, this is a pretty interesting launch for the new Grit X2 from Polar, and I'm hoping this kind of like interesting launch coverage doesn't continue on in the future, but I certainly am eager to test it for all of you, and I'm also extremely curious to be what the price will be when it comes out. A lot of things are definitely in flux right now, of course, in regards to the trade war, so this is certainly going to be an ongoing story, but make sure to subscribe to the channel for any updates I'll have for you on that front. And if you liked the video or found the information in this video to be useful, just do me a quick favor, hit that like button down below, and in the meantime, have fun out there, and we will see you in the next video.